What's up, my smooth and skilled sailors? Welcome back to another episode of Off the Top Podcast. We're going to be showing you some essentials to your gentleman's book.
Yeah, exactly. And when Julian says gentleman's book, he's talking about the repertoire and the tools that gentlemen have. And so we're going to kind of go over a few things. We're going to talk about footwear game, which we both have knowledge and skill on in different areas, which will be unique, as well as, accessories for the gentleman, watches, ties, bow ties. And then I'm going to get into some grooming and self-care stuff.
Yeah, and if you are a lady listening to this, maybe you can, take some tips out of this and, help us with if you are dating a man, help him out. Or maybe there's some tips in there that you find beneficial that help you and you can adjust to kind of your style or what is equivalent, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. Even though this is going to be something specifically kind of more tuned for the gentleman, I think that anybody can take things out of this if they wanted to. So go for it.
So some of the first things I kind of want to ask Jordan is, what are some just not too descriptive, just essentials that you have like in your day-to-day outfit?
In my day-to-day outfit, usually, I'm somebody who usually will have a watch on their wrist, and it depends on what kind of mood or what I'm doing. But the watch could be a smartwatch, which is obviously super handy and connects to my smartphone. So I won't always have to be taking out my smartphone to check what's going on, or just kind of like a fashionable watch or something that, is more athletic.
Yeah, and a lot of people say that the first thing they notice about people is their footwear, but if you have a relatively nice watch or a unique looking watch or a different color scheme, that's also going to catch someone's attention right away and maybe start a conversation if they like watch or a compliment, or it might really kind of enhance your outfit to a different level.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's pretty much what it does. I mean, it's a tool first off for me to be able to keep track of time, because usually as adults, we have a lot of things going on. So, you would want to be on pace for your day and make sure that all your your schedule is on where it should be and where you should be.
Yeah. And I think it's pretty smooth too, because we're also addicted to our phones. They show the time. It's a little bit of a bulky kind of mechanical action, but having a watch and be able to, tell the time, or if it's a smartwatch, tell the temperature or whatever you need to do, it's a little bit smoother than kind of going through those actions, a little bit quicker. And, to some people being super smooth is super cool, and that might help you out as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that there's a lot to learn about watches as well, just on movements, where movements are from, where it's made, who made it. And I feel like that could be specifically a thing that you could talk about with somebody else who's either a watch person or somebody who just admires watches. I mean, there's been a couple times where, I've seen somebody with a watch and I've asked them like, hey, is that, it could be like a Citizen with an Eco Drive in it. And they're like, oh yeah, it is. And then we have a conversation from there. I mean, watches are a great tool, but they also have more facets than just the watch itself. It has kind of a social aspect as well.
Exactly. And my one tip for watches would be, if you don't have a watch currently, I would suggest, rather than getting, a variety of relatively inexpensive or cheap watches, I would suggest kind of saving up a little bit and getting something that you can afford that's a little bit more on the higher end. And the fact that way you don't wear the watch every day, but it still doesn't look, because some watches that are you get relatively inexpensive can make your outfit look worse or cheapen the style, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think it just depends on what kind of watch you're looking for and what kind of watch you get, because there are a large amount of watches out there and large amount of watchmakers, and there's extremes at that point. So there's watches you can get for $1, and then there's watches that you can get. I mean, literally Floyd Mayweather just bought an $18 million watch. Like, what the hell is that? I mean, I'm not, trying to portray any of those, but that just shows the extremes of the watch. And so there's a lot of places that you can fit yourself in that watch game. And the things that I would suggest too is, don't be afraid to go for, if you're not a big baller and, you don't have Rolex money, you don't have Omega money, you don't have some of those like nicer watch brands, or like Junkers. That's one watch brand that's pretty expensive, but pretty nice. And you find yourself in that like $100 range or even a little lower. You can find some really good pieces like Timex or Psycho, I think I'm saying that wrong, but bear with me, that are actually pretty damn gorgeous and do the job.
Yeah, exactly. Just kind of do your research and, figure out what's your price range and what, a decent one is based on reviews or looks to your style. And I think it also can button down to what you're wearing too, and moving into kind of like that button down range. And you have a watch, but you aren't just naked. So you gotta, get something to fit with that. And I think a nice thing to have in your repertoire is a few decent button downs that vary in length, from like a full sleeve button down to like almost a polo button down, or maybe one you can roll the sleeves up to, mid arm as well.
Yeah. I think that button down shirts and collared shirts are always, something that can be very versatile. The one thing that I want to take the time to say in this podcast is make sure you get a good fitting button down shirt. There's a lot of the times, or, I see it a lot where, a shirt doesn't fit a particular person perfectly. And granted, shirts aren't made to fit you solely unless you get it tailored. So you're going to have to be very picky about what you're going to wear. And even if you want to take the time to tailor it, you can make like a $5 button down or button up shirt look like $150 one, just off of the fit that, gives to your body.
Yeah, and I think tailoring is a very certain aspect that you probably have a tailor around you or near you that can help you out and you can establish a relationship with. In terms of trying on, these button downs or shirts you find at the store, dress shirts, right, casual shirts, whatever they may be, my tip there is when I'm looking at shirts, I don't like being in the fitting room for a long period of time. So maybe you find one in a certain print you like and you find the same style in a different color print. I try on maybe a large and an XL on the other one so I can still see the way each color or print looks, the variety that I'm choosing from, and then say the large fits well, I go get a large and the other one I got an XL instead of, trying both on and both sizes and kind of killing or wasting some time in the fitting room, in my perspective.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. Just kind of having a game plan whenever you go in and get fitted. I guess if I had something to bring to that as far as, what our viewers should be looking for or should be considering when wearing or looking for button downs, one, be comfortable with multiple different metrics of size. So you just mentioned large and XL. Some, in the ones that I've been looking at, a lot of them have your neck size instead of, large and XL. So make sure you know that. Make sure you know which size you are in large and XL. Make sure you know what your neck size is so you can get that right fit. Another thing too is that now that we have the internet and it's a great thing, you can find some amazing deals on shirts on the internet in different places. And so my thing is, if you have a shirt that fits you extraordinarily well in your body, this is something I learned the other day, actually. Take that measurement when you're going to look for other shirts. So what that means is that if you're looking online and you're like, I'm not sure, if this is going to fit me well, we'll go back to that article of clothing that fits you perfectly and you love the way it fits you, and then see how close those measurements are to that.
Yeah, and I think too, if you're having trouble finding different threads or different things to wear, it's also nice to look at maybe a celebrity or someone who influences, or maybe someone at your work who dresses decently, and kind of analyzing what they're wearing. Like, what, I like that print or that style of shirt. I'm going to try to find it for myself. Or like, this guy's a similar size and he's, this makes him look slimmer, or this makes him look a little bit bigger, X and Y. You can also kind of get some ideas there, so you aren't just stuck in the clothes section of whatever, retail department store, whatever store or online you are, just staring at way too many options.
Yeah, it's always a good thing to have some sort of direction you want to go in, either if it's an example of other people that, fit well or put something together that you particularly like. And I truly believe, I take the stance of, imitation is the greatest form of flattery, especially when it comes to fashion. And don't be too afraid to possibly, borrow something from somebody else who you see that you really enjoy what they're putting on. I mean, I've done it multiple times and I know people have done it from me. So, don't be afraid to, grab or, borrow inspiration from somebody else's look.
Yeah, and I think one other thing that came to mind while we're talking about kind of we went from watch to nicer shirts, button downs, etc. Is one of the things I think about is grooming as well. And the first thing that came to mind for grooming is there's a lot of gentlemen or men out there who take very poor care of their fingernails and hands. Like, I understand there's like hard labor and different, job types that abuse your hands, but it only takes 5 minutes to clip your fingernails or your hangnails, and like, it's not too detailed or going like getting a manicure or something like that. It just like having some beat fingernails is, regardless of who I meet, I'm instantly like, oh, there's something a little weird here.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen like the long cocaine, pinky nail, and that's obviously disgusting. Yeah, I mean, it just kind of shows and it kind of sets the tone about like how well you take care of your body. And I think it's all cohesive, the watches you wear, the button-up shirts you wear, if that fits you well, then you'd imagine that somebody would take care of their bodies in other ways as well. So I think that that's just a representation. And another thing I want to say about that is something that I used to do, which I don't anymore, luckily, is I used to chew my fingernails. And I don't think it was much of a nervous habit, just the like, oh, my nails are long, like, let me take care of this shit. And I didn't have nail clippers. First, it's pretty disgusting. Secondly, it leads to a lot of infections on the corners in your fingernail themselves, like around your fingers. And that's pretty painful. And, also, it kind of looks bad if your fingernails are a little inflamed, swollen, and red. So just think about, taking the time, either if you have to work it in your schedule as Sunday mornings, I, read and clip my fingernails, or like drink tea, watch news and clip my fingernails. It doesn't matter. Just make sure that that's one of those things that you always take care of, just because they're always growing back, right?
Yeah, exactly. And regardless if you're a farmer or a CEO, just kind of simple hygiene tips for when you are off the farm or out of the office can make an impression on, the people around you and the people in public, to where maybe, there's some conversation being had, or, people aren't as hesitant to talk to you because, your hygiene's a little off, your grooming's a little weird, which I don't understand why people will do that, but it is something that occurs in our society, and it's something you can avoid.
Yeah. And another thing too, I mean, if you're going to make the point of, I'm going to be ungroomed, and that's the type of image you want, then perfect, then you're hitting it and you're nailing it. But just know, if that's not your specific image, then you got to rethink some of the things you're doing as far as grooming. And that also reminds me, when it comes to grooming, make sure that you have, that your facial hair, if you have facial hair, or your actual hair is, neat and orderly.
Yeah, and I think there's some different tools you can use to, do that on your own, so you aren't going to a barber all the time. I suggest having a barber instead of going to Great Clips or Super Cuts, or that might be because I'm African American, but still, though, for some reason, the stigma there of those people that cut your hair could really mess some things up. So there's a couple tools that you could have in your home that would help with that grooming process.
Yeah, definitely. And before we move on to that just is a huge point in itself. Know your hair. Really, if you know that you need like certain things done to your hair, if your hair is really thin or your hair dries out easy, then know your hair. So that means, taking certain steps. Maybe you don't wash your hair every day that you take a shower. Maybe you wash it every 3 days. Just be cognizant and know yourself so that you can set yourself up for the best success possible. Now, to move on to the actual grooming tools, one thing that I highly recommend, somebody who has facial hair like myself, one of the best investments I have ever made, was an electric shaver.
Why is that?
Because so when I first started getting facial hair when I was younger and in high school, I used to shave, or in like early college, I used to shave with a razor. And the things that happen with that is my hair is naturally a little bit more curly. So what happens is when I shaved with a razor, I wasn't taking care of my face afterwards. So I'd shave, and then a couple days later, I'd get ingrown hairs. Now there's things to stop and help prevent that. One of those is to exfoliate your skin after, and I probably suggest before shaving as well. What that does is basically it kind of roughs up the hair and roughs up the skin a little bit so that those hairs aren't as easily or prone to like, coming back around and into your skin, or even not even piercing the skin and just going back in.
Yeah, and one of the tips I have there is maybe finding a mirror that sits in your shower so that your skin can warm up and your hairs kind of stand up. So when you go through that, you're getting a lot of that dirt, and you don't have to do it after the shower or before. It's kind of all streamlined into one process.
Yeah. And another thing too is make sure you know how to shave. So your hair grows in certain patterns. And so that means that your hair lies certain ways as well. You can get it to stand up normally, with like some shaving cream, and also, making sure it's like the right conditions, a little warmer, so it like stands up a little bit. But also know that, like as far as your hair goes, and it's different for everybody. So parts of your hair will lie down naturally, parts of your hair will lie up naturally, parts of your hair will lie to the side naturally. And the thing to look for when doing that is what I do is I usually will get a brush and just brush it down to make sure it looks somewhat uniform. And then you can kind of see a little bit better and how that goes as far as like, okay, that doesn't feel as nice as if I was brushing the other way. Then you kind of know, okay, so my hair wants to, lie this way other than another way.
Yeah. And with that electric razor, you can, set it to where, or you figure out your facial type or the look you want, where you're going pretty close to a clean shave, might clean it up a little afterwards, or, keeping some ruggedness or 5 o'clock shadow, however that, benefits you. And I think it's also nice to have the combo of having some clippers in your house as well, just to kind of, line up your hair and whatever type of hairstyle you have, kind of line it up and edge it out a little bit more appropriately if that's the look you're going for, or maybe get some stragglers that you missed, and just kind of get some of those hairs that maybe you're growing quite a bit of neck hair on the sides or something along that and you want to get rid of it. Clippers help in that aspect as well.
Yeah, exactly. And you could literally be the best barber in the world. And if you didn't have, enough mirror or, mirrors to see what's going on, then you wouldn't be able to get them. So make sure that you guys have mirrors as well as the proper tool of like an electric shaver. And also, since this is kind of more popular and more trendy, as far as guys with beards, don't be afraid to really take care of that beard as far as, oiling it down every once in a while. Make sure it's trimmed. So like all those kind of wild hairs that make your beard look a little more bushy, if that's not the way that you're wanting to go with it, make sure that those are trimmed off. And so you can still maintain that sort of jawline, which is very important. Because some people, I have a friend who used to have a very, very large beard. And one of the reasons why is because his jawline wasn't as defined. And so what he did instead was have a beard and then trim the beard so that it kind of portrayed that silhouette of a jawline.
Yeah, that's I didn't really think about the trend of beards, not necessarily the trend, but the more products there are to take care of them and reduce like irritation, make it look a little bit better, kind of feels better on your skin. So with that, let's do some quick hitter tips. So like my 3 quick hitter tips are going to be like maybe Q-tips, clean out your ears, little like travel floss accessories, because at the end of the day, guys, your teeth are super valuable. Like you don't want to lose your teeth at like 35 regardless of who you are. And having beat teeth is a really big impression. So if you can maintain that and get the chicken out of your teeth or whatever you've been eating out, that's huge. And I also think sunglasses are something to have in there as well.
Gotcha. No, those are all good tips, and I really like it how you started your quick hitter tips with Q-tips. Very clever. As far as that goes, flying off the seat of my pants, the tips I have are just, make sure you nail down your grooming. And also thing is, don't be too crazy with your accessories. Your accessories are accessories for a reason. So what they should do is kind of culminate to the crescendo. They shouldn't be the crescendo of themselves. And when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about music terms, but I see outfits as crescendos. And I think we've talked about this with John on an earlier podcast. If you guys want to talk about male fashion, that'll be one that you want to look at. But as far as that goes, don't get too wild with your accessories. Make sure that you're groomed properly. And probably the biggest tip I have that I'm going to save for the last is make sure you have fun with it. It's not always to be very like uptight and like, let me put myself in this box if I'm wearing a gray suit with, you know, a bland shirt and a bland tie. You know, have fun with your fashion. If it's in the workplace, if it's outside, you know, on Friday nights, whatever, just have fun with it.
Yeah. And I think, kind of towards another thing that Jordan and I both know about is kind of figuring out your footwear choice, sneakers, dress shoes, even flip-flops if you're into that, kind of figuring that out and having a variety within that.
Yeah, definitely. Make sure that your shoe game is well balanced. One thing that I look at, especially with the more professional setting where, you know, things that I've gotten into over the past couple of years is boots, as well as, you know, dress shoes. And what I can say about those is that you can really get some shoes that'll last you a lifetime. All you have to do is look for the value and pick the right shoe for you. One things that I look for, that I have 2 pairs, probably 3 pairs of shoes, 2 boots and 1 like nice dress shoe that I think I can have for the rest of my life. One thing is that I looked for Goodyear welts. And what Goodyear welts is basically the way the shoe is sewn onto the sole instead of glued on. And another thing I looked at is the proper ways to take care of my shoes as well. I mean, as you know, I mean, I live with you, Julian, so I know that, you know, every once in a while you'll clean your shoes. You'll make sure that they're, you know, they're not depreciating in extreme fashion or any sort of way. What are the things that you do to clean your sneakers specifically? And then I'll go over my dress shoes.
I think sneakers in particular, the thing you look at is like a lot of shoes have white soles. A lot of shoes may have a leather upper or like a nubuck or a suede. So kind of being aware of the elements that you're going into when wearing these sneakers. If it's raining, you probably don't want to wear a nubuck or a suede because it's going to lay it down. You might want to wear a leather, but you don't want to use a leather similar to boots. You don't want to use a leather that isn't water resistant or waterproof because you're going to get water stains, and you can it's almost impossible to get rid of those if it gets, you know, bad enough. And then, you know, realizing at the end of the day, maybe you have a good variety of shoes. Like maybe I need to clean the midsole, so I use a shoe cleaning product called Jason Mark, which is like a biodegradable 100% cleaner. It's like water and whatever the base they have in there. So it's not going to yellow your shoes because a lot of chemicals can yellow like a white sole over time. So it's going to keep, you know, the shoes white, or it's not going to strip any paint or tarnish anything. Like if you have metal aglets or something along those lines. So it's going to keep them clean.
Gotcha. Yeah, and that's very important too, to like know your products, know what they are going to do to your shoes or your gear, and then also know how to apply them to your stuff. The things that I use for my leather boots and my leather dress shoes is I found a very good shoe polish that I wear, and it's going to fit certain colors rather than others. Obviously, you know, if you have a dark brown boot, then you're going to get like dark brown shoe polish. If you have a lighter brown, you're going to get a lighter brown. Just fit the shade of the color of your shoe. Also, a thing that is very important is that you make sure you oil your shoe every once in a while, just so it can like maintain its suppleness, not dry out. And also it helps maintain that water resistance that some shoes do have, especially if they're leather. And what you can do is, let's say that you're going to go out and you know it's going to be necessarily pretty rainy. Just put a little more heavy of a moisturizer on the shoe itself, and that'll help maintain and lock out that moisture on the outside of your foot. Another thing too is always make sure you dry out your shoes throughout the whole day. You're in your shoes, you're sweating and stuff, and so if you have a leather shoe, it's going to make it wet on the inside, and wetness and humidity on leather will destroy it. So you make sure that that's dried out at the end of the day.
Yeah, and something that kind of popped up in my mind during this, while I was talking about the cleaning or preparation process as a whole, I think another staple you should have in your apartment, house, dorm, whatever you're listening to this at, office, is a lint roller. Like, there's a surprising amount of people who don't have lint rollers, and that can make a huge difference if you just sit down and, like, if you sit down in a chair that has some dog hair or there's some dust or something, lint roller is going to get that right off and make everything look super clean, because you can lint roll pretty much everything.
Absolutely. That's a very good point. And another point I want to make on top of that, I mean, there's two tangents I want to go on really quick. Even if you don't have pets, even if you don't have like a cat or anything like that, if you go over to somebody's house, this happens to me all the time. We don't have a cat here, But I go over to my really good buddy's house. He and his wife has 2 cats. Whenever I go over there, it's always a guarantee I get cat hair on me. That's why those lint rollers are there. So that, regardless of a situation in your own controllable home or a situation outside, you're going to be taken care of. Now, the second point that I want to make is that you want to make sure that you have some sort of way to take wrinkles out of your clothes. Either if it's, throwing it in the dryer, if you have the time before going to an event and like shaking out or like, working out those wrinkles, or an iron and an ironing board, or even the thing that I use as a steamer. Make sure that you have a way of taking care of that and making sure that you're presentable.
Yeah, and if you've never used an iron or a steamer, go to YouTube, right? There's going to be a ton of techniques and things to do to look for different material. Like, it's really important to understand what you can iron and can't iron. Just kind of look into that and understanding, the ways to iron things without, burning your clothes or, putting a sweet iron stain or like soaking it with a steamer or something along those lines.
Yeah, exactly. And so, as we're kind of wrapping up and warming down, is there anything else that you want to tell our viewers or listeners about a gentleman's fashion or gentleman's like gear?
I think I don't have any last tips, but I think I'll just run down kind of my list of things that I have daily or in my house. Is like, I have a lint roller, I use chapstick is huge to have. I guess chapstick, and I don't chew gum or use mints, but in the future, I think I'm going to choose mints over gum. And the fact that if you're somewhere, it's very easy if you're chewing gum to kind of loudly chew gum, or, it gets bad and you have to toss it somewhere and you might look like a litterer or something like that. Having mints is smooth. It still freshens your breath. Like, it dissolves, your breath smells well. So maybe having, a mint thing in your car around you is going to help a lot as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's one thing that I always catch myself doing. First, we're on the same kick as far as wherever I go. I have this backpack that I usually take with me, and it has like this travel size floss in it that I always replenish. Always have chapstick with me. But that mint thing is very important, because a lot of the times you'll catch yourself be like, damn, I hope that's not me. But you just ate that garlic platter. So it definitely is.
Yeah, so in the end, quick hitters, we talked about watches, button-down shirts, or figuring out that style and fit and getting it tailored. We talked about grooming, facial hair, having an electric razor, figuring out your hairstyle, trying new things, still having fun, figuring out, proper footwear or, what style fits you, and still the ability to be flexible and trying new things. There's a lot of different things you can go through, from little accessories like the lint roller or sunglasses, travel floss, maybe even cologne we didn't touch on. A few different things that, you could have around you or near you at most times to be, kind of on your A game, or, looking a little bit more professional or gentlemanly in public.
Yeah, and the key to all of this is make sure you just educate yourself, because there's a lot to learn about a lot of things. So the second you start, diving into it, the better you'll be prepared at preparing yourself and presenting yourself. So without further ado, I would just want to thank our listeners once again. We're on Spotify. We're still celebrating in this house. Huge win. And other than that, Julian, take it away.
Yeah, we also touched on, if you really like this episode, we have a style guide episode a little further back with John, where we talk a little bit more about jeans and colors and accessories. We're on all the platforms. We have an email, theoffthetoppodcast@gmail.com. We thank you for listening. Send your thoughts or questions there, and we'll catch you next time.